Trying to be doing that bullshit. On to good news. Oh, welcome back to BS with Brian Simpson. I have a special guest here, Evan Lovett, a.k.a. LA in a Minute, and this guy knows a lot of shit about Los Angeles.
Thank you, Brian. Yeah. I appreciate you having me here.
I came across your Instagram, and I've been meaning to have you on. I'm so glad we got to get you here. Busy man. So we were just talking about how. So my thing was, I always tell people that L.A. is a place of its own, and San Diego is what people that have never been to California think L.A. is.
That's a really, really good explanation.
Yeah,
because L.A. is its own beast.
It's its own beast, man. Well, here's the real thing. L.A. is it's really like 6 or 7 places, right?
So it's funny you say that. I'm often asked, what's the ideal day in Los Angeles? Or even before that, you have friends from out of town coming to LA and they want to do all these things. I want to go to Disneyland and I want to go to the beach and I want to, blah, blah. And I'm like, dude, you better have a lot of time because LA is huge. And the thing that I always come up with is you need a week in LA because it's almost like there's 7 different regions inside of LA. So I'm like, you take one region per day and that's going to be your LA.
And you got to have money. See, here's the other thing. You got to have money. You can't listen. You can enjoy LA with no money, but not really. If you strap you don't got to be rich, but if you strap for cash, you need to go somewhere else. So if you're trying to experience the whole place,
it's tough.
It's tough.
Even just getting around costs you money. Right. That's the problem because of how expansive it is. Big time.
Yeah, big time. I mean, sometimes, man, because I live in the Valley and all the comedy clubs are in the city. And in Hollywood, and sometimes I'll lose money to do a spot. If I only have one spot in the city, the Uber costs more than I'm getting paid.
It's an investment, though.
Right, it's an investment, yeah, for sure. But it's like you can't just come. And that's the thing, you're not close. Nothing's close to you. That's what it really is. It's like you're not close to the beach. You're about 40 minutes from the beach. 40. See, that's another thing about LA. You're 40 minutes to an hour and a half from the beach, depending on what time you're trying to get there. Right?
It's funny, when I was growing up, they used to say there was a trope that was like, everything's 20 minutes away in LA. And I was like, that must be real outdated. Although during COVID, you could get anywhere in 20 minutes. Then I'm like, oh, that's where that came from. But to your point, it's always funny. They measure LA in minutes, not miles, the distance. And you're never close. No, even when you're close by, you're never close.
You're not close. And you never know what's going on. Sometimes you'll be looking at an Uber and it says it's 5 minutes away. And then 15 minutes later, it's still 5 minutes away. So you've obviously born and raised LA native.
Yes, sir.
And what made you start the LA in a Minute Instagram account? You're also on TikTok.
Yes, okay. Also on TikTok, but Instagram is my preferred social media platform. But wherever anybody wants to watch, I'm happy. So I was born in Sepulveda, which is now known as North Hills, right? Geographic center point of the San Fernando Valley, borders Northridge, Panorama City, Arleta, and my parents were big, kind of LA nerds. They'd always take me around Los Angeles, right? We'd go to Griffith Park, we'd go to Venice Beach, Dodger Stadium, of course, the Forum, and my dad used to always take little circuitous routes everywhere. He'd never just go straight freeway. And obviously this is days before Google Maps and stuff, but just seeing different neighborhoods and all this stuff and kind of drilled into my head sort of the love of the city. Now, but how LA in a Minute came. So I always loved LA. I was always one of these kids, growing up, even as an adult, some athletes from LA, I'll be like Giancarlo Stanton, Notre Dame High School, Sherman Oaks, you know what I mean? So I know all that, Gilbert Arenas, Grant High School, right? Whatever it is, just LA nerd kind of stuff. But so my son is 8 years old now, and for the last couple years he's been like a screen time monster. You have kids?
No.
Okay, so kids are, it's nuts. It's weird. I mean, I'm sure they say about every generation, but so it's an effort to keep him off the screen. And that battle, I just wasn't going to win that battle. You know what I mean? So I was like, listen, if you want to stay on the screen, if you want the screen tomorrow, you have to learn something today. I didn't care what it was. It was Saturn Has Rings, or blah 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 movie was the largest grossing movie. And I'd be like, well, you learned something, just to at least be, so I could feel like, hey, he's getting
it can't just be all junk food.
Correct. So now as I said, I'm an LA nerd. I was a journalist coming out of college. I worked for the LA Times a little bit. I went to UCLA, wrote for the newspaper there. I was the sports editor for the Daily Bruin. So I'm always like a journalist at heart. I still get the LA Times to this day, the physical newspaper LA Times today. So I'd always try to tell my son, Felix, I'd always be like, yo, here's the stories. Here's what's going on in Los Angeles. He's a kid. He did not care. I'd be like, you're eating breakfast. Like, read the newspaper like Papa used to. He'd be like, are you serious? Like, no, right?
No, you're not getting no child to read the newspaper.
So around like holiday time last year, and this is when Felix, my son, got into TikTok, right? He somehow discovered TikTok. And at the time
Your son's name's Felix?
Yeah.
Or is it Felix?
Felix. Yeah, how do you know?
Because that's one of the controversies.
That's right, Felix. It is, especially because my wife is Mexican. So when we came up with a name, we needed something that like her family and my family could pronounce, and it would be, because some kids have a very Americanized name, and then
that was the first video of yours I saw, was the Los Feliz or Los Feliz.
There you go. There. So yes, Felix. Good job.
Are you in a group of like LA enthusiasts, or are you the foremost expert?
Okay, let me be clear up front about something. I am not an expert. I love LA. But what I do,
being humble.
No, what I do is research. I do like enjoy doing research. Like I said, I was a journalist, so I like doing the homework on this stuff. One of my friends says, bro, you do a term paper every single day. And that's kind of like, I don't look at it like that, but ever since he said that, I'm like, it really is like that kind of research. But if you quiz me, even on like my videos, I don't know every little nugget by heart that's in the videos. But yes, like I love this city. I have a genuine passion and curiosity.
I'm sure the knowledge you're walking around with LA wise is probably more than the average person.
Without patting myself on the back, that's probably true, just because of the research that I've done, though, right? Like,
but that's what's fascinating about it is, because see, that's the thing is like, I love an expert. I love it like assassins.
Yeah.
I love to see somebody put a gun together or a pool stick. Or like the other day I watched a video of a motherfucker laying bricks, and he was just so good at it. He was just right. And
dude. Let me tell you something. On that note, this is what's funny. I always talk about like reality shows, right? Is you could literally have a reality show on any group of people or any vocation. I always take the example of like landscapers or gardeners, as we used to call them in LA, where it's like people, a lot of people, especially in nicer neighborhoods, don't even like think about them. They're just background. But if you somehow had a reality show like The Real Gardeners of LA, and you just follow them around and doing their work and what it takes to getting up early and doing here, and why these dudes wear long sleeves when it's hot out, and you're like, wow, this guy's like fully. But all this stuff is so interesting. But to your point, anybody that's an expert in their field is fascinating because they know it, they're good at it, and that knowledge and that information is what makes them what they are. And they know more about that than you or I do, and then thus it becomes interesting if you have any kind of curiosity.
That specifically, it's like the very wealthy people in LA know this by now. Well, they all learn this lesson real quick. Is when you first get one of those fancy mansions and whatnot, and you're used to, you learn real fast to be nice to your gardener, because the first time you have the attitude, well, I can get anybody to cut my grass. It's like, no, you can't. The dudes that cut that grass is like the dudes that cut the PGA Tour golf course. That's you can't just go find somebody that can do that.
That's true. But on that note, I must say, being nice is one of my big things too. That people need to just be nice to people in general, man. Like I just want to put that out there. I know that's not where you were going with that, but it's something that really irks me because, again, same people you see on the way up, same people you see on the way down, but just making everybody happier and making it doesn't cost anything to smile at somebody or ask them how their day was. So anyway,
that's tough here because the worst people from everywhere else come here. Right?
Get into that.
Let me explain. Let me rephrase that. This is a place where dreams come true, and so but the amount of people that are talented and secure is the same. But the amount of people that want to be famous is astronomical, right? So LA gets inundated with all the people, the talented people. But it draws the people that think they're talented and they aren't, which, like the William Hungs of the world that like think they can sing, but they really can't. It's like, so it is way more of them. And so it's just what it is. The nicest places draw the best people and the worst people.
So it's more competitive. I'll give you that. I'll give you that.
But that's only Hollywood.
But at the same time, a movie, you ever see the movie Big Lebowski?
Yeah.
Okay, so that dude could literally only exist in Los Angeles. He's not competing, not trying to be famous, just literally drifting at whichever way the wind blows. I mean, that kind of is sort of like another LA mentality. And not to say he's a good guy or bad guy, but going back to the point, I mean, for me, I just feel like you put good, and I always tell this to my son, you put good energy out there, you get good energy back. It's not foolproof, but it's a good way to go.
Is there anything that I absolutely, because I'm moving this weekend. Is there anything I absolutely have to do before I leave LA? Any food I have to try?
Oh my gosh, I don't know what you have or haven't done. My favorite restaurant is Jitlada. It's a Thai food restaurant in East Hollywood.
Jitlada.
Yeah, but it
yeah.
depends what you're into, though. That's like a restaurant. That's a do not miss. Super spicy if you want. Not everything's
I don't want super spicy.
Okay. Food wise, I mean, look, what are you into?
Let's just say a steak.
Again, I just actually had a conversation. There's a nice steakhouse downtown called Nick and Steph's, which has a nice outdoor patio. It's not necessarily the best steak in LA. It's good. But man, good steak. There are a lot of good places.
Fish.
Sushi Row on Ventura. This is something I just learned. So you ever heard of Sushi Row on Ventura?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so Ventura Boulevard has the highest concentration of sushi restaurants in the world outside of Tokyo. At one point on Ventura Boulevard, there were 190 sushi restaurants at the same time. 190 sushi restaurants. Now, it's a bit deceptive because Ventura Boulevard is also the longest contiguous stretch of businesses on any street in the world. So it's a lot of businesses to draw from. But still, and I think it's 22 miles long. 190 sushi restaurants is insane. But the reason it developed is because the concentration of master sushi chefs started there. Teru Sushi in 1979, was the first notable sushi restaurant. And then just little by little, all these sushi chefs kind of, success. You fall in the footsteps of success. There's a lot of can't miss places. The original Katsuya, I know Katsuya has this reputation as a party spot and blah, 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 the one in Hollywood. But the one on Ventura and Studio City is the original Katsuya that to me is my favorite sushi in the Valley. So that's where I go.
Sushi Row on Ventura.
Well, Sushi Row is what the stretch of Ventura is called with all the sushi restaurants.
Over in Studio City.
Yeah, but the original Katsuya is in Studio City. Now, otherwise, regular fish right here in Van Nuys, there's a place called Mariscos 818. Catch 818, Mariscos 818, right there in front of the Van Nuys Airport, which is awesome. That has this aguachile dish. Okay. Let me get back to just to close out the story on why I started LA in a minute, if you don't mind.
No, please. Yeah,
okay.
I interrupted you.
So it's no, you didn't interrupt. It's your show. Yeah. So last holiday, right? My son's getting into TikTok and stuff like this. We are at my wife's family's house for Christmas, right? And she has all her cousins, huge family. And, I was sort of lamenting the fact that I'm like, dude, Felix is always on screens. What do I do? I tried this trick, which seems to work, but he still watches junk. It's not like that makes him watch all this History Channel stuff. He just learns one thing, then puts on the garbage. And then, so my wife's little cousins are like, maybe you should have him watch news on TikTok. And I was like, okay, get out of here. I saw what news on Facebook did to the world. News on TikTok sounds terrible. What is it somebody telling the news while they're doing a dance, this dumb, show me a couple videos. And I'm like, I don't know. But the seed was planted. And then, so what I did, I was like, you know what I'm going to do? Since he watches TikTok, and he does listen to me. He's a good kid. Just doesn't want to see me read the newspaper, hear my facts. I was like, I'm going to put these LA news stories on TikTok. And this is how it started. LA in a minute. To be honest, I don't know where the name came from. It just came to me. But, I started, if you go back to the original videos, I was holding an LA Times, physical LA Times, and I'd be these are the 3 big stories of the day, in LA news, stuff like that. And TikTok's algorithm is very interesting. It's different than those other social media because you don't need to be boosted by a celebrity to get a lot of views. They put it out to a certain number of people. If that engagement is high, they'll put it out to more people if that engagement is high. So like on your first video, in theory, you could get 1 million views, if your content is that great and people respond to it. So that started getting a little bit of traction. But then, there's not interesting news every day. So I was reading this book called LA's Legendary Restaurants by this author called George Geary. And I got into what are the oldest restaurants in LA? And everybody knows that a lot of fast food was invented in LA. So I put out this one called oldest fast food chains that originated in Los Angeles. Everything from McDonald's to Taco Bell to Bob's Big Boy.
See, I didn't know McDonald's started here.
San Bernardino, technically. But it was actually the Aerodrome. So the McDonald brothers, their dad had a restaurant called the Aerodrome that started inside the LA County confines. It was this weird shaped building, kind of almost like a UFO, like an octagon kind of, I guess. The McDonald brothers literally moved the building to San Bernardino, changed the menu, and opened as McDonald's Barbecue. That was the name of it. It wasn't even like barbecue food. They were known for their burgers and fries. But I guess back then, being a barbecue restaurant was a big thing. So they moved it to San Bernardino, and yeah, that's where it started. So that video became fairly big, and then since then that's sort of been the theme is okay, people want, and it's more interesting for me to do the history or the oddball trivia or tidbits, or a lot of times I'm just driving and I'm like, what is that thing, or this idea squirrels, or one today I did mosquitoes. I don't know if you get bit by mosquitoes a lot. I do. And they're always on your ankles, and I'm like, what's up with these mosquitoes? Turns out that LA has an invasive mosquito species that attacks from the knee down. Back when you were a kid, I don't know if you remember, the mosquitoes were big and slow. You could smack them. If they got you, to get your shoulder, your arm. Nowadays, dude, my ankles are all bitten up. Turns out in 2001, there was a shipping container from China that brought in those lucky bamboo plants. Apparently, some of them were infested with eggs, and it's a different kind of mosquito. It's called an Aedes mosquito. The ones that were native to Los Angeles are called Culex, but these ones are more tenacious, they're more insidious, they're smarter, they're faster, they're smaller, and they only bite from the knee down as one of those natural selection things because it's harder to swat. If you see a mosquito right here, you're just like this, right?
Dude, this is making so much make sense to me.
So just like anything, and LA, I always say this, around every corner, everywhere you look, there's something exciting, there's something fun. Right down here, after this, I'm going to go to that Wat Thai temple, which was the first Thai Buddhist temple in America. It's right down the street. It's in Sun Valley. And it turns out Los Angeles has the largest population of Thai people outside of Thailand. So, I'm going to check that out. I know they have this big food event. That's something you could check out if you're leaving later than Saturday. Is Saturday and Sunday, they have this food fest, which is some awesome, authentic Thai food. But it was started by literal Thai Buddhist monks in 1972. They planted the seeds in 1970, but they built it in 1972. But it literally is a Thai Buddhist temple just sitting here in the middle of Sun Valley, which is pretty
surrounded
crazy.
by all the porn.
Yeah, dude. But again, it's factories and the mountains and but everything is so interesting. If you have a curiosity and a passion,
everything is here.
Yes. And
everything is in LA except New York. Right? Everything is here. It's true. It's the only thing that's missing is just other places. But there's nothing you see. This is one thing I do love about it. This is what I'm going to miss. One thing I do love about LA is that you won't miss any media. Every movie premieres here. Every song, every trend, all the fashion, all the shows,
Totally.
every tour, everything comes here.
Absolutely. World city, world metropolis. And one of the things that intrigues me about that is LA is such a young city relative to all the great cities in the world. Literally in 1880, the population of Los Angeles was less than 10,000 people. And if you think about it, that's 140 years, but less than 10,000 people. It's a town. It's less than a town. And in fact, it was considered the most dangerous and lawless place in the United States as recently as 1871.
Because it was so far west and so far south.
The literal Wild West.
Yeah.
The literal Wild West.
So let me ask you this. So is this correct? Because I've been spreading this information, so I hope
yes,
it's right. But I remember reading that Hollywood quite by not accident, but because it used to be a lot of orange trees and lemon trees and shit, and because there were so many different vistas, because you got the mountains, you got the tree, you got the orange groves, you got the all the different what am I trying to say, locations, all the different. Someone filmed a movie here. Because it's not like they decided this is where the movies would be, but somebody filmed a movie here way back in the day when moving pictures was kind of a new thing. Somebody filmed a movie here because it was so many different places to film for cheap, so you didn't have to travel, right? And then that movie ended up being a hit. I don't know, like an unexpected hit, and then every movie studio started moving here. That's why Hollywood is Hollywood.
Okay.
Is that true?
Pieces of that are true.
Okay, all right. Let me know what's up.
So check this out. So moving pictures started in New Jersey. Thomas Edison had the patent on motion pictures, right?
Okay.
And that's where, because he had invented the technology, that's where the movies were being made. But he didn't, as much of a literal all-time world genius he didn't have the foresight to see movies being what they are today. So he thought he was going to make more wealth on enforcing the patents, right? So he had the patent for all this motion picture stuff. So everybody would either give him a piece of their movie, or they couldn't make the movie, or he'd sue him, right? So what happened is one movie producer was like, I'm going to get as far away, because this is like the 1890s, early 1900s. He's like, I'm going to get as far away from Edison as I can to make my movies. What's further from New Jersey than Los Angeles? Comes out to Los Angeles, and then this is where your theory does come true, where he's like, wait a minute. I have mountains, I have desert, I have ocean, I have hot valley. So then to the point of like, wait a minute, not only am I away from Edison and him trying to enforce all these patents and suing me, but I have literally every climate, every background possible. And then that kind of sparked the movement to Hollywood. But Hollywood itself was originally known as Hollywoodland, and it was a real estate development by Harry Chandler and some other people, but mostly behind Harry Chandler of the LA Times. And if you really want an interesting story, I won't get into this because this will bore people right now, but Harry Chandler and the LA Times literally are one of the main reasons that LA is what it is today, because they
get into that. Our audience is smart, right?
Well, smart but dense though. So
okay.
So look. So it started with. Let's give
us the bullet points.
Okay. So Harrison Otis, Harry Chandler, 1880s, 1890s, LA, again, lawless, dusty town. They started a newspaper, and their newspaper was built on a couple things. Number one, no unions. Number two, basically promoting propaganda for Los Angeles, getting people to move to Los Angeles, buy the real estate of Los Angeles. Why? Because the land was cheap back then. They snatched it all up. And it was basically, and luckily it ends up being like a great place, but they wanted to get people to move to Los Angeles. So all the stories were basically like, I want to call it propaganda, call it hucksterism, if you will, getting people to move to Los Angeles. But because what they did in LA we have a water problem. LA is, and always has been, this drought thing isn't new. LA is an arid coastal desert, right? So LA just doesn't have enough water to be a big city. What they did was go and get the water from the Owens River Valley. But before they did that, they had bought up all the land in the San Fernando Valley and all the outskirts where all the suburbs are. And they were like, once we get this water in here from 250 miles away, which in itself is such a Herculean task of engineering. And it's literally like a wonder of the world that they have this aqueduct from the Owens River Valley to Los Angeles. But they knew that as soon as we can irrigate and fertilize all this land, now you have this great, valuable land to sell. So the LA Times, the main people from the LA Times, along with other people like Moses Sherman, Isaac Newton Van Nuys, Isaac Lankershim, these big conglomerates, a lot of them streets are named after them and stuff like that. But they owned all the land, and the LA Times would just come to LA, land of health, land of oranges, you're going to get healthy, the sun, blah, blah, blah. And tuberculosis was huge back then. And what the LA Times started doing was printing these, forget what it's called, but special issue LA Timeses to put in newspapers across the country. during the winter. So in Indiana, in New Jersey, when it's cold and people are freezing their asses off, you see pictures of sunshine LA. It's like this, like my dad used to always say this to me on January 1st every year. We'd watch the Rose Bowl. He'd be drinking a bottle of cheap champagne. I remember it, with his shorts on. He'd be like, we're the only place in the country where you can wear shorts on January 1st. Like the rest of the country's freezing their asses off, and he's like, we're out here wearing shorts. I guess San Diego too, but so either way, that was like kind of the propaganda that brought people out here. And so the LA Times was sort of behind all of that with real estate, water, and believe it or not, LA used to be the world leader in mass transit as recently as 1914.
Okay, now break that down for me because I've heard this too. I've heard that LA is that we used to have an intricate streetcar system, and the subway the planned subway was like going to rival New York City.
This blows my mind.
So
it wasn't even planned.
Cue the clip from Who Framed Roger Rabbit right here.
This literally blew my mind. Okay, so there's a railway station kind of by my house in North Hollywood, right? I've seen it 100 times, maybe more. Never thought much of it. You know what I mean? But it's like an old building. But again, 1890s isn't like, oh my God, that's crazy old. It is old for LA. But I'm looking into it, and it turns out that that's one of the original railway stops in Los Angeles. And I'm like, okay, that's interesting. I was like, maybe I should do a story on this. And the more I'm looking into it, and I'd heard all this stuff, I was like, wait, LA wasn't supposed to be a railway leader. LA, get this, there were more electric train station stops than there are back then in the 1910s than there are freeway exits today. So there were over 1,000 miles of track. There were 20 different lines, right? And there was everywhere, 4 counties, San Bernardino County, Kern County, Orange, Riverside, Los Angeles. Every county, there was this extensive network that Henry Huntington ran, Pacific Electric, Southern Pacific. He consolidated them. But Los Angeles was a rail city. And if you see these maps, it's mind-boggling because it's like, let's say you see the New York subway maps. And you're kind of like, okay, that's a lot, dude. Like, how do I figure? I mean, you learn how to figure it out, but it's like there's a lot of stops, and if I got to go to Staten Island, or if I need to go to Queens, then I need to go to the Bronx. Like, how do I get there? And blah blah blah. I need to switch trains, dude. I'm looking at these old LA railway maps with over 1,000 different stops, and it's funny because it wasn't. Now you have, every mile there's a freeway exit, which is still kind of a lot, but back then it was like seemingly every block. And the reason why is because all these real estate purveyors, they'd buy a piece of land that wasn't developed. First thing you do is now you get an extension on the train to, now we have a stop in Arcadia. Now we have a stop in Whittier. Now we have a stop in Glendale. And now we have a stop in Watts. That's how all these towns develop.
What happened?
Dude, so what happened? Okay, so there's the conspiracy, which may or may not be a conspiracy. I'll tell you. So, a big investor in the rail lines, because they ended up not being super profitable after a while, right? That's just too many stuff. It's like, that's tough. Infrastructure is a tough business to be profitable in. So they stopped being as profitable in a while. And this is after World War I. People are, they want more autonomy. They're starting to travel more. And roads weren't what they were, right? The first freeway wasn't until the Arroyo Seco in 1940 was built. And the first paved...
Was that here?
Yeah. In
the first freeway was here?
Yeah, 1940, wow. Arroyo Seco, the 110. You know it as the 110. So the first paved highway was Route 66. And that started in 1926, but it wasn't even paved until 1938. So in 1938, you couldn't even drive coast to coast on pavement. That's pretty recent. So it makes sense. Cars are new. There's not even a lot of roads. Trains were the wave of the future, if you will, for transportation. But now all these investors in the train lines were the same car companies that ended up being car companies: General Motors, Firestone, Goodyear. And what they're seeing is people's tastes were changing. Now this is where it becomes is it a conspiracy, or is it really just people would rather control their own self in a car? They'd rather have the autonomy of driving a car than waiting on a train. Even if they're efficient and nice, for me, I would take a car 9 out of 10 times. I wouldn't say 10 out of 10, but I like driving. So General Motors, Firestone, Goodyear, So they start buying more of the railroad lines and start buying more of the infrastructure from those, the tracks, the stations, stuff like this. And little by little, they start dismantling them, right? Because at the same time, you have the ascension of the car, and you have Dwight Eisenhower passing the forget what it's called, but the act to build more freeways and realizing that people are using cars more. We need paved roads. We need a highway system. We need all this stuff.
You're positive. I say conspiracy.
And a lot of people say that to this
straight
day.
up conspiracy.
If you look it up, there's a Wikipedia entry for General Motors conspiracy, which says that General Motors, because they wanted to shoehorn everybody into driving cars, is the main reason why they took control of the railways and started dismantling them.
Something similar happened in San Diego too.
It was the Federal Aid Highway Act, by the way. It was the Eisenhower.
Yeah, so here's my other question: Do you know anything about any other cities? Because I can't imagine that you would in your research for LA. There's no fucking way you don't come across some other mind-blowing fact about some other cities.
It's always cool stuff. Every city has cool stuff. Now everywhere I go, I look at it through those eyes. The city I know best besides LA is Vegas, because my dad used to be a boxing manager. So we
another arid desert that they convince people to move to.
Totally.
Right?
So interesting fact about Vegas that I just learned. Vegas is the only city that's taking water from because it's drought. Everybody's talking about the drought, which is real. And Colorado River, we're running out of water, and Lake Mead, and everything's running out of water, and the waters are dangerously low. Vegas is the only city taking water out of the Colorado River right now that's not using their full allotment. Every other city, whether it's Arizona, Utah, like Salt Lake City, Phoenix, Los Angeles.
How is that possible?
That's what I wanted to know. I haven't looked into the depth, but I wonder, is Vegas's allotment just so high that they're not hitting it? Or I do know this, like Vegas, for all of its, I don't want to say wastefulness, but Vegas goes over the top with what
excess.
They do. But they're smart. The people who run that shit are so smart. And at a certain point, like, it does become smart and cost efficient to either conserve or maybe they're reusing it in creative ways or whatever it is. But yeah, Vegas is probably the city that I know like the best.
I've been to Vegas like 5 times this year.
Yeah. Yes.
And what always blows my mind is because normally I won't eat seafood somewhere that's not near water.
Yeah. Yeah.
But Vegas, I don't know what they spend to get fresh seafood in Vegas, but
I'll tell you this. It's funny. There's this Greek seafood place. I don't know if it's still there. It was in the Cosmo. There was this Greek seafood restaurant, and they used to say that they had a shipment flown in every day from Greece of fresh seafood. Now, again, I have no reason to doubt it.
I believe
but
it,
again, when you go there and you're trying that fish, you're like, wow, this is fresh and delicious.
You go to Vegas, best steak I ever had in my life, Bazaar Meats in Vegas.
Really?
Bruh. The one here closed.
Yeah, the SLS.
So I discovered it in Vegas and then found out there was one here and then found out it was closed. Wow. But Bazaar Meat, yeah, man. They had it was the best steak I ever had. It was
That's
easily
awesome
the most tasty. Maybe it was the whole experience, but Bazaar Meat, check it out. Okay, so here's the other thing too. So you were naming all of these dope restaurants in LA, but have you noticed? Because you were talking about the oldest places, but I've noticed that post-pandemic, or can we even say that?
Yeah.
Well, what the CDC came up.
Post treating the pandemic seriously.
Okay, right.
Good.
Right.
Well said.
So yeah, this is post straight-faced pandemic. This is pandemic with a smiley face. I've noticed that like the places with you can't necessarily go off reputation anymore because so there's this whole thing too about nobody wants to work and all this, and I looked up the history of that. It's like it's sort of this anti-labor thing that always comes up, that no one wants to work, but the truth is no one. So what I'm saying is no one wants to pay anyone more because everyone's been losing money, and then no one wants to work for shit wages. So what ends up happening is you end up having the people that are willing to, like, you, instead of getting the best people, you end up having the people that are willing to do it, right?
Man.
And so, not every single one, but a lot of the restaurants I've gone to that I loved before the pandemic, they're just not the same.
Dude, honestly, Brian, like, this is one of not just a fantastic point, but something I've kind of been pounding the table on. Like, look, when restaurants first opened back up during pandemic, you couldn't expect, right? Of
Right,
course.
right.
And you're like, hey, it's my favorite restaurant. It's a little off, but you're like, hey, I'm just glad to be out here eating at a restaurant, right? But then in the not the aftermath, the straight-faced aftermath, I guess, you're going back to these places and you're like, it's just not as good. And like you said, you hear about, okay, maybe the line cooks are different, the staff's different, they're short-handed, blah, blah, blah. Supply chain issues became a real thing. But I'm not going to call it like a theory, but this is what I think. The nice restaurants, the reputational restaurants, not to take anything away from anybody, but they just aren't back to where they were for the reasons you named. And right now, and it's funny, you asked me, is there somewhere I should go eat, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, dude, it's a different era, because if you would ask me in 2019, I'd be like, go here and then go there and then this place. And, you got to check this out. Oh my God, this place is to die for.
You know something we're overlooking too?
What?
Is the old people that can't come back. So
I was just gonna say there's a lot of restaurants that have been killing it since like the 1960s or whatever, and their best hostess was 66 years old,
right.
And their best line cook was
the Improv was like that.
65.
The best bartender at the Improv was this old guy. I forget his name. Forgive me, but he's not dead, but he's just
a lot of people took early retirement when COVID hit, and they have no reason to come back. Especially if they're older, they're more likely to get sick, and that could be really disastrous for them. So
imagine being that dude that's been, because there's places where like this broth has been brewing for 50 years. You know what I mean? Because I actually saw something like that the other day, where they every night they dump some of the broth.
Like a sourdough starter, if you will.
Yeah, and then the next, so it's like it's a 50-year-old thing that they just keep.
Dope.
But it's like someone knows when it's off. Someone knows, all the little idiosyncrasies of the process in the restaurant.
Institutional
and they're all
knowledge
gone.
base.
Yeah,
it's an institutional knowledge base that gets
so they're
lost.
gone,
Yeah.
and then new kids are. I don't want to say lazy, but yeah, they're lazy. New kids are used to
It's a different
things
world.
being.
It's a
Different
It's a different
world.
dude.
So maybe
They're
we
not lazy though. It's that some things, especially when it comes to like food, to learn how to really cook the fuck out of a steak, that takes a long time to develop that expertise.
I don't know. I did it in 6 months, but that's just me. That's just me. I'm a beast. But if you but what I'm saying is, like, if I snapped my fingers and killed everybody that knew how to churn butter, we'd be some butterless motherfuckers. Because how do you even discover? Do you think we could rediscover that?
Churning butter, probably, but there's other things that I think are more complex. Probably not.
Some people take fresh cow's milk, they get butter, sour cream, curds, all this other shit, and I wouldn't have the slightest
Where do you
clue.
start? Where do you even start?
No,
That's
or,
hilarious.
or imagine if I just blew up all the GPS satellites and everybody had to learn how to read a map.
That's
because I know how to read maps, and I've forgotten. I couldn't do
Thomas
it.
Guide. You guys remember Thomas Guide?
yeah.
That was the thing right there. And that I need to find out if that's an LA only thing.
But
or
you-
what.
They still use those in ambulances because you can't trust the GPS 100%.
Oh yeah, can you imagine?
Yeah, they still. Can you
imagine dying while the GPS is recalculating?
Oh, dude.
you have to know how to read Thomas book so that you can actually get around, because there's going to be stuff in there that the GPS is not updated, or there's going to be roads that are.
Or the EMT's like, it says the hospital's right here.
yeah.
There's nothing here.
On the way here, in fact, San Fernando Road where it's at.
Yeah.
Like, kind of like double. It's one of those where it's like you can make a right here at San
but
Fernando Road.
Don't tell people where our studio is. Crazy groupies. No, I'm just kidding. We don't have groupies.
Well, San Fernando Road is a huge, huge street and one of the most historic roads in all of Los Angeles, because that's where the train first came into Los Angeles from the north. So without San Fernando Road, there would be no San Fernando Valley, and it stretches all the way from the north end of San Fernando Valley all the way through downtown.
That's why the intersection's so fucked up. Okay, that makes sense.
There you go.
Are you sick of this? Because I just imagine you, like, every time I imagine you sitting around a fire pit, and everyone just being like, so what about this? And what about, like, every time you're at a party with your wife and shit, like everyone's just asking you questions.
I'm curious though. That's why, because I'm passionate about
Me too.
it. So everything I hear, I'm all. What I lament is the fact that I don't have enough time to get to all of it, because it's like if I post something or talk about something, everybody's like, "Well, what about this? You need to cover this," and it's not annoying, but it's only like, oh shit, I do need to cover that because that's interesting and I want to know the history.
So are you gonna do a podcast about LA? Because you know what is. I know everyone's like, oh, everyone has a podcast, yeah, but not everyone's good at it. This is interesting to me.
It seems like a lot of work.
Because look, everybody, because
yeah.
Rob had never heard of you when I was like, he's going to be a guest, and when I walked in, he was looking at the videos because it's you get hooked in.
I think again, it's good. I hate to use this term, but good content because it's interesting. And like, hopefully I'm not being a jerk about it. And I just want to share that passion and shine a positive light on Los Angeles because there's so many negative stereotypes and tropes. I used to always hear whenever I grew up, LA has no culture. LA has no history. Bullshit. LA has so much of both. You just need to look for it. And again, to this conversation we were having prior to the show, people from outside are like, oh, well, LA is just Hollywood and the beach and Beverly Hills and that's it.
Yeah,
I'm like, dude, that's not even like real
irritating.
LA. Yeah.
Hollywood is like 20% of it. Not even. Right? Yeah.
It's important. Look, Hollywood is important
because
important. Of what it produces.
It's where all the money comes from.
Yeah, but like it's always funny when people come from outside of LA, they're like, I want to go to Hollywood. I'm like,
no, you don't.
You're going to be a little disappointed.
Because here's the thing. You're going to get tourists. You're going to be disappointed before you even leave Hollywood Boulevard. Because those stars are only clean for like 3 blocks, and then you're like, oh, wait a minute, you can't make no turns. You're just like, well, wait a minute, this is not what it is on the TV.
Yeah.
But you know what? There's no feeling though. The first time I came, so before I had the balls to move here, the first time I came here, I was asleep in the car and I woke up and we were on Hollywood Boulevard and it intimidated the shit out of me. Like all the lights and the tourists and everything because I didn't experience anything else. This is my first time ever in LA. I wake up, it's nighttime and it's
a big deal.
It's in full Hollywood Boulevard mode and I see the dude dressed as Michael Jordan and the dude is painted gold and it's people are dancing and pop-locking and it was just a lot. And I was like, is this LA? I'm not ready for this.
It's overwhelming. It's definitely overwhelming.
But then you go down like 3 more blocks and you're like, oh, this is just a regular place.
and that's the funny thing.
I used to live on Franklin. That was my favorite. Like I was just so like that little neighborhood. Which I just loved living there. It was like by that there's a Gelson's over there.
Yeah.
I used to live. I was like the next block from the Gelson's, and then the Improv Theater is right there.
Yeah, it's cute and it's walkable. Well, cute might be the wrong word, but it's like it's got a personality and it's walkable and it's cool.
And then once the Scientology people know that you're really really not going to take the pamphlet, they're cool.
One quick thing, I want to go back real quick about restaurants. I will say, and I feel this is very important for Los Angeles, the places to eat are the literal mom and pop spots. Go to that place in the strip mall. Yeah. We have so many different like ethnicities and types of food, Filipino food, Salvadorian pupuseria, like every single Mexican place. There's this media outlet called LA Taco that does a really good job journalism-wise, but they started by like reviewing tacos and everything, and every year they have this thing called Taco Madness, right? And it's like the NCAA tournament brackets where they do 64 different taquerias matching head-to-head, and they have like a vote, and they end up with like the number one taqueria. But I always bring that up, or I bring that up here, I should say, because what other cities do you have 64 restaurants of one type of cuisine that are even good enough to get in the dance, to even be in the tournament? So I say because LA, like obviously, look, first of all, LA was a Mexican city, was part of Mexico before. So it really is like a Mexican city, obviously huge Mexican population. But dude, those are the places you ask about restaurants. Any strip mall, there's so many. Koreatown, Chinese, all these great places. San Gabriel Valley has the best Chinese food outside of China. So I mean like, the big food restaurants,
food trucks around here are fucking killer.
Food trucks, man.
Because I've the 64 seed taco thing that doesn't even include like some of the best tacos I've ever had is Tacos Leon over in Culver City.
Yes,
it's mind blowing, and it's just a fucking truck.
I love it. I love it when you like, because that's the other thing too. The nicest restaurants aren't always. They don't always look nice on the outside, or sometimes it'll be like a laundromat and a locksmith, and then the name of the place is just Thai food, and you're like, what the fuck? And you go in there and it's like the best shit you've ever had. So yeah, you're not necessarily got to go to like some people, because people that haven't lived here, they think that like all the nice shit is just in Beverly Hills or just, you know what I mean? Like they have to go to the Grove and it's like, no, man, some of the nicest shit is it's in an unsuspecting place. You would never guess that like this parking garage has like a little booth in it and there's a man that just gives you a burrito through a hole or something. You know what I mean? Perfect
illustration right there. And two things I like to say. Number one, you get the same rush of endorphins from Jack in the Box at 2 a.m. as you do from eating a Michelin star meal. So let's just call it what it is. Like you can go to and not to say, look, it's a different experience and that's part of it and blah, blah, blah. And you're with your wife or your girlfriend and trying to impress her. It's a different story. But like people that are sort of elitist about food, it's like, dude, just be real with yourself. Like that taco truck is it does the same thing for your brain, your stomach, your mood as like, Gordon Ramsay or whoever.
Yeah,
like,
and your butthole.
And one more thing just about taco trucks. The taco truck was literally invented in Los Angeles. Raul Martinez of King Taco, 1974. He immigrated from Mexico City, was watching soccer games at MacArthur Park. And back home in Mexico City, they used to like make carne asada during the soccer. And now it's like commonplace. But he was like, you know what? I'm going to buy an ice cream truck, make it a quote restaurant on wheels, and start serving carne asada. Sure enough, first day he sold $70 worth of tacos, which in 1974 is a good night. Second day, double that amount. Within 6 months, King Taco opened. Now there's over 20 King Tacos. But that was the first taco truck, and that was invented right here in Los Angeles. And then Roy Choi of Koji, or Kogi, I've only been going there for 15 years, but that was the taco truck that kind of kicked everything into high gear because food truck, if you will, but it's Korean tacos. But he was the first one to sort of capitalize on social media. It's right when like Twitter got big. So it was like, we're going to be at the corner of like third and then like, okay, now we're going to be in Northridge. And like it became a thing. So taco truck, food truck culture literally came from LA too, which I think is very important.
I learned a lot today. Is there any final question you have for Evan?
Have you ever done a bit on Baxter's Choo Choo? Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, what is that?
You know who Baxter Ward is? He worked on the LA County Supervisors.
I know the name. I don't know anything beyond that.
He did in 1976. He was the one who proposed the referendum for the Metro link in LA, and then it got voted down. Do you know what I'm talking about? He ran for mayor like 4 or 5 times or something.
Keep going, yeah.
But that would be an awesome topic for a bit.
And I'm telling you this, turn over a rock and you got an awesome story about Los Angeles. I know.
This motherfucker always knows some shit that I don't know.
That was deep cut. That was true deep cut.
So,
right there.
My last quick question.
Yeah.
This is a waste of my last question. Okay. Why did they take the land off Hollywood? It used to be Hollywood Land.
Great question.
Now it's only Hollywood. What happened?
It used to be Hollywood Land, and the sign used to say Hollywood Land. And to be fully honest with you, just as a development, it was too long. And the people who wanted to maintain the sign, because it wasn't maintained, they had put it up, and it was real estate development. And the developers, sold their land, and they were like, "We're fucking out of here." It was when they wanted to start keep the sign nice. They were just like, it doesn't need the land. It sounds just as good Hollywood. So
is Hollywood a real wood?
So there's multiple stories about why it's called Hollywood. One of them is that one of the founders, she had a tree that was like a holly tree, and she wanted to call it like Hollywood, but that one doesn't really stand up too much. But there's not really a conclusive story on why they called it Hollywood. Yeah.
Okay. Anything you want to plug before you leave?
Follow LA in a Minute on Instagram. It's at LA in a Minute, just like Los Angeles, LA in a Minute. And if you have TikTok, it's Evan Lovett, EvanLovett. But you can find me if you look up
It's
LA
not
in a
LA in a Minute on TikTok?
I could get into that. I haven't changed it over yet. I have both, but you find me if you look up LA in a Minute.
I thought it was going to be like a cool story about like...
No, that one is not a cool story.
Okay.
But LA in a Minute.
And of course, we should we do one article before he leaves?
Sure, we can do an article before he leaves.
Let's do that.
We should also do. We talked last time about philosophical quandaries as well, becoming a regular thing.
Oh yeah, but I didn't do.
You didn't prep one, okay?
No. Yeah, we like philosophical quandaries out here.
Let's do an article.
Okay, let's do one. because it's kind of what we do. So, but see, we could ask this motherfucker questions all day. All right, let's do something light.
Good luck.
Okay, you know what? Whatever. Okay, police find. I'm sorry. Scientists, not police.
Wow, those are two quite different things right there.
That changes the whole.
Yeah, that's a very different vibe.
Because if it's an article about something police found, it's usually not a good thing, right?
Right.
Okay, study finds that rainwater is no longer safe to drink anywhere on Earth.
Oh, come on.
Yeah.
Even Amazon or something? Even like
nowhere.
Pure. Okay.
Nowhere.
Keep going.
So researchers at Stockholm University and ETH Zurich University found that the water is unsafe due to the presence of forever chemicals, which have been found in remote places like Antarctica and on the Tibetan Plateau.
Okay.
According to the study, the rainwater contains per and polyfluoroalkyl substances. Fluoroalkyl substances, PFAS. Human-made chemicals used in various consumer industrial products.
Okay.
Researchers say these chemicals don't break down in the environment, and based on the latest U.S. guidelines for PFOA in drinking water, rainwater everywhere would be judged unsafe to drink. Although in the industrial world we don't often drink rainwater, many people around the world expect it to be safe to drink, and it supplies many of our drinking water sources. The study was published last week in the journal Environmental Science and Technology. That wasn't light at all.
So
I remember going outside when it was raining.
Me too, absolutely. Especially here in LA because the rain's so rare. I go and bathe in the rain outside.
So this PFOA apparently it'll fucking ruin your.
But you know what? You want to take on that?
Yeah.
So here's the deal. There was a study like a few months ago that came out that said like every newborn baby has a certain percentage of microplastics, right? Because that's how many microplastics we ingest on a daily basis, including even like pregnant mothers who are so careful. My philosophy is this. It's like, do I believe it? Of course, it's probably true. But again, you're not going to avoid these poisons or these chemicals in doing anything in normal life right now. So get out there, enjoy the rain, suck up some rainwater. You're not drinking gallons of it at a time. I mean, and
I think there's way worse.
Worse.
Like I found out the other day that like a friend of mine told me that our taints are shrinking.
Our taints?
Our taints.
Oh.
The space between your butthole and your balls is getting smaller. And that's probably more concerning than rainwater being unsafe or whatever.
Pollution is shrinking human penises, warn scientists.
Now that.
Well, the taint size and penis size are connected, right?
That would make sense to me.
And so but penis sizes are shrinking.
That's a little more
but
concerning.
clitorises are getting huge. No, that's not what's happening. I guess we don't have a conclusion on that because it was a big science story, but it's not something that we can do anything about.
No.
It's like them telling you, oh yeah, wait a minute, before you get out of here, I want to dispel this myth.
Yes.
Because I learned this is false. The air in LA is not in the late 80s, early 90s, it was horrible. Now it's 100 times better than that.
Yes.
But it still has the reputation for the smog and whatnot.
Check this out. The air in Los Angeles was actually the worst during the 50s because we did not have a central place to dispose of our trash. We had city incinerators, but there were over 300,000 backyard incinerators in Los Angeles as recently as the 1950s because people would burn their that was considered the most efficient way to get rid of your trash. So when you can look it up, you look up smog 1950s Los Angeles. I'm telling you, it's like these ones you see in some places in China and India now where you literally cannot see the building across the street because of the smog. So in the 60s, like the Bureau of Sanitation kind of like cleaned up a little bit, pun intended, but through other means, California and LA have been going that direction to clean up the air, but the air's been improving since the 50s. It probably got the biggest reputation during the 70s and 80s, but it's definitely a lot cleaner than it was. But the 50s was actually the nadir for air quality in Los Angeles because of the backyard trash incinerators.
1943, the air quality was so bad that people thought that the Japanese had attacked LA with a chemical weapon.
Yeah.
There's poison smog in the air.
We could do this all day. We got right. We could do this all day. Well, okay. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns, you need advice, stories of revenge, email me, bswithbriansimpson@gmail.com. I will be at the Edison Improv next weekend in Dallas, Texas. Buy your tickets. Go to my website, briansimpsoncomedy.com. Don't forget to follow LA in a Minute on Instagram and Evan Lovett on TikTok. If you want more interest, and LA, follow both accounts.
Yep.
Right, you're gonna check
LA in a Minute. You'll find LA in a Minute.
Yeah, but follow those ones. He's the most knowledgeable man that I know on Los Angeles, and I really thanks for being a guest, man. I appreciate
Thanks for having me,
of
Brian.
course.
This was fun. It's a great time. Thank you, Rob.